Welcome to Newport. Welcome to this is Beach Equity today.
Yeah, Sweat Beach.
Sweat Beach.
Yeah, I like Beach Equity. Beach Equity goes hard.
Beach Equity goes hard.
Yeah.
So we're in here with Oren. I'm in his town, his neck of the woods.
It's true. I gave him the pass, the Newport Beach pass. You know what I mean?
He did.
Yeah.
I had to call him up.
He can get a boogie board without anyone giving him trouble.
But today, we honestly have no plan. We were going to sit down on the beach. We were trying to workshop this earlier today and figure out what we were going to do. Sit down on the beach, get on these ugly beach chairs, and make some content. So when we talk a little bit about brand content, our content, what we're doing with Cut 30, the whole nine, and I'm going to get right into it. So you and I both been working with a handful of brands. I would say in the last probably 9 to 12 months, right? A significant amount of brands. When a brand comes to you, talking about content strategy, and they're trying to develop it, where do you start? Where are you like, okay, we need to start here before we even start thinking about content ideas?
Yeah, so usually now, this is a lot different than it was like 9 months ago, but now I really talk about, okay, what's the team that you have in place? Like we really go through like, who do you have? And then what are their skill sets? It's no longer like, what's your dream content? It's more like, okay, you have a graphic designer, you have a video editor, you have a creator, okay, can you get one? Like, can you do this? Is someone willing to talk on camera? Well, basically like, look at the toolkit they have, because then you have to decide, do you want to hire more people? Do you want to like bring stuff in, and then what can we do with what we already have? But like that's the new way now. I'm kind of reverse engineering it. What about you? How are you doing it?
It's roughly the same. So when we onboard clients, like we're going through like a big list to literally understand constraints, bandwidth, team, and skill set. Because if they don't, like they could have this dream content that we want to be putting out, these series, but if they don't have the right people, they just have photographers or like kind of old age creators, it's not going to work.
Yeah, and the new thing that I think I've been doing is basically been like, hey, if you don't have somebody, like everyone's been trying to hire a creator and using services like JT's service and a bunch, but I actually feel like there's not, like most of the good people are getting scooped up or like getting good money. It's actually harder than it was ever to get those people. And so now what we're doing is like a training piece. I basically recommend like people run through Cut 30. Like the art director guy who works at Crease, like he ran through Cut 30 and I mixed all the Crease content. And I was like, hey, here's a content plan. But you know, like they train somebody to execute it, and he's amazing. Like obviously you have to find someone that's good at it. But I feel like that's the new thing is like, all right, if you can't recruit that person, like you need a training curriculum for them. And obviously like we can just run them through Cut 30 because we work through that. But I think that's how a lot of brands should think about it is like, all right, we need to train somebody.
The other thing that we've been doing with some brands is we've been putting together creator programs, and we learned this from a different brand where, for example, you bring in 10 to 15 creators for a month and you pay them $1,000 to $2,000 for that month, and they have to create 2 to 3 pieces of content every single day. And then basically like what will happen is week 1, like 2 or 3 will drop off, week 2, whatever. By the end of the 4 weeks, you have like 1 or 2 outliers, and then you bring them on full time, and they're in that 50, 60K range. But you'll easily find the outliers who not only like know how to make viral content, but from week 1 to week 4, their content goes from okay to good to like pretty fucking great.
That's what's been funny. So I get this dichotomy of like the only people who I take now for that kind of work are people that like I have some great relationship with, or I see exactly how their content could work, or like bigger brands. So I'm starting to talk to like much larger companies. But I like that conversation because like they all have larger budgets, but they don't really understand how to spend it. And when I'm like, hey, I'm just pitching some similar things. Like you need 10 creators, you need like, all right, let's accumulate a ton of UGC. Let's actually look at your performance budget. Like what are you doing for your performance creator? Can we pull some of that budget? But I think that's how to look at it. If you have like, because look, if you have 20 grand, that's like 10 creators giving you at least 20 videos each. And you can learn a lot, or you can like onboard some people a lot. And people just don't think that way. I think a lot of it's because like people are like, oh my God, it's so much work to track and brief and all that. And like that's the real missing skill set right now is the people that can just brief content like all day. That's the most where like people keep hitting me up to hire for that, and I'm like, bro, you have to be able to give somebody like it's easily 200K plus to get someone that's ill that's doing that, and then like they're just gonna go do some hotter shit. Like
100%. That's the thing we've been dealing with is like on the Playbook side when we're the consulting. The hardest part is like we could give them good ideas, we could give them good examples, but the disconnect does come in the brief. That brief has to be so well with hook ideas, with pacing, with shot ideas, shot lists, very specific examples that like match the idea, or else what we think they know, they have no idea what it is. Like there's such a big disconnect there, and it's a hard thing.
One thing that went really well at Gel Blaster when we had a bunch of creators, we were doing like a creator per country. Like a Germany creator, a Mexico creator, a UK creator, was like they were running the same brief basically. Like it was all POV like content, and like some exceptions. There was like a few other styles, but it was like it didn't require your face to be on cam. It was like they could repeat this video this other person did in their language, but it's like very hard. Like you have to find that for a product that's not like so inherently cool looking. Like the way that is pretty hard.
And even think about like Gel Blaster. There were so many things that they could replicate. Like you could send all of those kind of airsoft POV videos and just be like, hey, this is what you're replicating. And it's kind of like, it's very easy to say yes because you're strapping a GoPro, you're strapping whatever you're strapping your phone.
Yeah, use the neck rigs, bro. The magnet neck rigs is the most underrated content making tool in the game. Yeah.
The other thing that I think is big for brands, especially when they're creating the content strategy, is again not going straight to the idea, but start thinking about like the narrative and the perception you're trying to create, right? Like I think you and I we both talk about Midday Squares, like their whole narrative is better for you chocolate. Then you look at a company like Represent, their narrative is on a mission, right? And that central idea, that central narrative is, okay, I'm laying the foundation with this idea, this perception that I'm trying to fuel. Now when I think about content ideas, now when I think about my content pillars, all those things need to feed and amplify that narrative, or else you're creating a perception that like your whole narrative, the whole idea there is to be able to create something that people gravitate towards, that they feel like pulls them into something bigger that they align with.
If you don't have that framework, it's not just your core content that's hard. It's almost like any marketing decision. So one of the things that like I do a lot of, I've started to move a lot of work towards like instead of like it's a month-to-month consulting, I'll do like a workshop. So I'll do like 4 hours with a team or a day with a team. And one of the ones I did a lot, not this last few months, but the few months before that, was all about trend response. Because everyone was like, these things are happening. How do we keep up with them? How do we decide? Like, how do we do anything with them? And that was the biggest thing there was like, all right, so these things are all happening. You all know them, you see them, you put them in a Slack, but you don't do anything. But then it's not just about who's gonna act on it, it's about is this right for the brand? So basically we just come up with a matrix of being like, all right, well, how do you actually, like, what is your decision criteria on if this is right for us or not? And it's good, it forces a good brand conversation, and it forces a fluid brand conversation, and puts a set of rules in place that brands can use to like actually act on content versus be paralyzed by legal and approval. You know?
And I think like when you go through exercises like that, brands realize how disconnected content is from every other part of the company. You know what I'm saying? Like they don't understand how, oh shit, like just because this is trending doesn't mean we should do it. And if this is trending, then we can figure out how to do this well, where it feeds that narrative, it feels like, or feeds what we're actually trying to do as a brand, then it works. And then it becomes so obvious that these disconnects are such a reality for 100 million, like dude, we have conversations like these $100 million brands, legitimate, like 100, 150, and the entire department is disconnected.
Well, that's why small brands are crushing it. Like this is one thing I like to think about, and this goes all the way up. Like why there's so much room for incumbents is because just like these big brands, like you can only imagine like how much it takes for them to do something that you can be like, hey, that's $1,500. You know, I could just go do it. And I think that's why we've seen so many brands come up. But another thing to think about there is that applies to influencer too. So I see this on the other side where I have all these like big brand deals, and then Ashwin has a bunch too. We'll have some the same, some different. We get these companies that just have no idea. They just want you to read the script, and you're like, hey, like not only do I make content as an influencer, I actually make content about making content. And I also teach people to make content, so I have a really good understanding of what will work and will work for my audience. And you don't, yeah. And then you just get these teams who are like, oh wow, like, even though you spend this money for this company and you've spent millions of dollars on those campaigns, you don't know what it is. So something Ashwin was joking about, I thought was a fire idea. Is he was like, you know what, I should break down my best branded like paid content, like why it works, so I could actually see a case study of what they should be doing. Yeah. He made like this was like literally
in Salesforce. He was like, hey, I made this ad and it got 99% of the budget. Like here's why it worked.
And I think that's what, because when brands listen, like it goes inherently well. And I think that just as much as like everything about the alpha and where social media is, there's the same amount of alpha and like how you deal with influencers.
So one thing I've been talking to more brands about is there's a disconnect when you look at your organic content as its own thing, and then you look at influencers or athletes or ambassadors, whatever, as its own thing. Instead of looking at your top influencers or your outlier influencers and be like, they're a part of my content team. And then now you're actually integrating them into your content pillars, into your content strategy versus, hey, I need you to make this content because we have this promo coming up. It's like, no, like put it in your contract that they need to attend one content meeting every single month. They need to be in the mix.
We'd all be down, right? You know, I think that's the thing, is because you want the content to work. My biggest thing, hardest thing for me is I have all this brand deals. I say no to a bunch of them, and a lot of them just know the content's not going to hit. But you want to. All I want is for that just as well as the other content for it to propel forward. But then brands that get it, like I have an ongoing deal with Artlist. I do a bunch of videos for Artlist. But they're just like, it makes complete sense for me to be like, I do their announcements. They have a new program, they have a new feature, they've got a new guide. It makes sense, like I have input on those, like I'm quoted in the guide, they're putting it out about it, a section. And it's like they inherently get it, and it's so nice when that happens. Like you're willing to do a lot more for those brands and be like even this last video I did with them, I had a version. I was like, it's like the day before, I'm like, it's not good enough. Like send another one, because like I care about maintaining like what that looks like, and I know that like they're willing to work within what I think will work.
And I don't think like the brands realize that chances are we rather work with 5 brands instead of trying to negotiate with 5 other brands because these deals aren't like the deals aren't going good because the content isn't good and they're not giving us freedom. It's like, if you integrate with those companies, like you're saying, and we feel like we're a part of the campaign, you're gonna want it to perform better than anything else. Like that's how I feel with like heat map and like these companies or Particle, whatever, that like I align with and I fuck with what they're doing. It's like, okay, you're bringing me into the mix, I'm gonna make sure this shit delivers.
Sure. I think there's just no playbook to have those conversations with creators around what you really do. And the hard part too is like, even I look at it as people come to me, they want me to do like a traditional green screen video, but now I do all this other content. And I'm trying to be like, all right, what actually works or not, or be fluid, and it's hard too. And everything has to have like ad or be at the front of it. Like there's no way to really start the conversation in this organic way. And so I think there's gonna be a lot of change in just how we execute these, like over these next few years. It's like an interesting time. But it is, look, but getting sponsored content, if you are like trying to be a creator right now, like deliver a good message, like you have the ability to fund a lot of the other things you're interested in and work on, and do that in addition to working like a day job. I was working a job for a minute doing a lot of brand deals without having it like inhibit my work. And I think that's a really big opportunity for anyone out there with a unique voice.
And the crazy thing too is it's fairly simple. Like making one video for a brand over the, like if you're doing it for 5 brands over the course of 1 month, you can make a good amount of money if you're in that 150,000 follower range. Like you can make a significant amount of money to then be able to, I mean, it's like instead of investing in or like getting somebody to invest 250K into your startup, you can literally make 250K, 5 to 500K. Like if you're in that range, depending on how much content you're making, the audience you're going for, but like you could literally be your own angel investor and keep all the equity.
But because people like on TikTok, the money to start this brand or do this thing, and it's like, hey, you make money by making this kind of content, and then you make money by like freelancing. Like money doesn't come out of the air. Like money comes from like living below your means or getting extra income. But we live in this time where like between TikTok Shop, even like the TikTok YouTube creator funds, the ability to get like grow a following and do brand deals, or like if that's not like in the picture, like for anyone who's, especially if you're extroverted, like you should just be going for it. And I think that if you want to take money for it's like if it's not like deep tech, like I really don't think you have to deal with the pressure. These businesses are kind of almost better as like a flowing, like a fluid living thing that like works over time and like ebbs and flows.
Let's talk basics on content creation and video creation, especially for some of these brands who don't understand scripting, they don't understand developing hooks, visual hooks, title hooks. They don't understand that a video has 3 hooks. Start there, and then we'll kind of work our way down from writing scripts, hooks, to pacing, delivery, storytelling, etc.
Yeah, I'm gonna give some like concrete examples, because I had a pizza oven company hit me on LinkedIn. I was like, look, I'm not gonna work on this project, but I'll just give you directed quick on like how you'd work on this. For like, they had all these beautiful videos of pizzas coming in on the oven, and I'm like, all right, that's great. To reframe, it's all positioning. Be like, how do you make that a savable or shareable video? What makes me share the pizza oven with my wife or my boy, and be like, this is, I want to use this, and it's inherently like just give the breakdown. Like, all right, if that is all of a sudden a really interesting combination of ingredients, and then they're all listed out, and there's someone interesting or funny or good looking giving the presentation of what that looks like with the same exact video you already have, it becomes and shareable, right? And it's just like, oh, like this is how you like, all right, this is 65 grams of this is how you do it. Like, oh, done. I can do that with this oven. Yeah, but he's already in. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I was looking at all their content, and I'm like, look, if you don't lead with someone's body vibrating immediately, you're losing. Like, you have an immediate visual hook, and people get desensitized to their own companies. Like, look at it from a consumer's lens. Like, what makes you stop scrolling? And for any of those companies, like pizza oven, vibration, phone case, whatever it is like, what is that moment that makes people like lean in? You know?
Yeah, I think so much about like that. Remember that David Ogilvy quote where he's talking about 4 out of 5 people only read the headline, and so if you don't spend enough time on the headline, like, or if you waste your headline, you're wasting basically 80 cents of $1. And I think like when we're thinking about a short form video, we're just taking the idea of a headline. It's like your hook.
Yeah. Good looking pizza, 200 grams of protein pizza. You know what I'm saying? Like some plate, I understand what it does. Person's body vibrating with some sort of benefit. Like, you know, just I think it's just it's so funny how easy that position thread is too. And a good example, I talked about this in my YouTube the other week, but Ed from the other Cut 30, who did these like really beautiful breakdowns of like, this is why I love the cinematography of the bear. And in Cut 30, it was very much like, hey, why don't you move that to a playbook of the bear cinematography? Here's the 6 techniques. And I started bookmarking all his content once he shifted to that, being like, yo, this is sick. And then I automatically now, it's funny, like twice I brought him up as an example of someone should hire, because like these things come up in meetings, right? People will be like, how do we get this look? It's like, oh, actually, there's this guy who I bookmarked who actually tells you exactly how to get that look. And that's like, put yourself in the consumer's shoes. Like, how do you want to be perceived? And especially for services businesses like designers, etc., it's like, oh, the person that knows how to do that, who I bookmark because they know how to do that, becomes the person that you want to hire. And that's a connection I feel like a lot of like freelancers need to make with their content.
So to like even take a step back, something that again most brands don't know, and I think is essential, is every video has 3 hooks. There's the title hook, so this is the text that you put on the screen, whether that's it could be kind of replication.
Like on this, where it's just beach equity, and there's just us running. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, like that's the hook. Yeah.
So like there's the 3 hooks. So there's the title hook. This is the headline that you're writing on the screen. Then there's the thing that you say, right? Your audio hook. Then there's the visual hook, the thing that you're doing. And sometimes you could combine them. So like we've talked about this technique called Pope in the Pool, where like if I'm talking to the camera, but I'm also tossing my phone like this while saying something, naturally you're going to pay attention to the phone, and it's going to almost like make you not recognize the time as I'm saying some kind of verbal hook to the camera. Outside of that, right? So those are some of the key key things and key aspects for a good hook. But now going into storytelling, I think the easiest fucking thing that a brand could understand when they're script writing is to just use the but, so, therefore framework. Like to make it so simple, because what I've noticed is there's a I won't name the brand, but like they'll send me this script, right? And bro, it is like sentence period, sentence period, sentence period. And I'm like, just read this out loud. Read this to the person that's right next to you and tell me if they're interested, or tell me if it flows. Does it feel like the next line is needed? If the next line doesn't feel needed, then we have a problem out the jump.
Well, that's something I do all the time with scripts in the brand workshops, is I'll be like, all right, like you wrote the script, because part of the things we do is we'll do exercises, people will write some videos, and I'll be like, all right, now you're going to read them, and I'm going to read them, and I'm going to time it, because that's the other thing too, is like, all right, cool, okay, well, when do we get to the point? 7 seconds in, 50 seconds in, whatever, and then you just roll through it, and like, as soon as you say it out loud, you just get a whole bunch, but to break down, like, but, so, heretofore.
Yeah, so the first one is like, okay, and I'll use one of my examples, is it makes it easier. So it's like, this is Tesla's marketing playbook, but first it starts with XYZ. So that means, right, and so I'm using, basically what I do is like I use the hook, and then by using but, it's almost like you're forming another hook that's like, oh, like I need, like.
This was the biggest sales day of our career, but we have a massive problem.
Exactly. Yeah, and you got to use that voice too. You have to change up the voice. But naturally, like it forms another hook that's like, okay, that headline really set the context, but then all of a sudden we form like this other question in somebody's head by saying but. And then you transition to more information by saying a line. So this is Tesla's marketing playbook. But first it started with Elon did this. So it really changed when he did this. And that so makes it like, oh, okay, there's more information that I need to know. And then like you then introduce therefore or then or something like along those lines where it's like, fuck, like you basically trying to keep presenting information in a way that it makes it feel like that information was needed for you to be able to complete this bit of education or entertainment or whatever it is.
And and I feel like you can also do those visually. Like you can be like your butt or your story. Who does this really well is Rob, who's been on the podcast, Rob the Bank. Like his videos now, he has props. You can see like he will basically say a sentence and he'll like pull out a katana, literally, or he'll be like, $7,000 chrome hard jeans, right? It's just a vehicle for you to be like, oh, like, but okay, so like, why does this thing exist and like, where is it taking me? And you start to see through the videos and be like, oh, this guy pulls out 4 different things like throughout his video. Like, and that's like an interesting, like you start to look at those vehicles, where like, okay, you can say those or you can show those. And once you start getting like those tools and those little tricks, your video can be almost very the same every time, like the same kind of framework. Is you need to have that, like people also grow to expect a certain style. So I feel like that's good too. So what are you looking to do with your content next? I know you've added carousels recently, which are crushed. What are you looking to do next?
Yeah, the thing that I haven't done well yet, and the main thing is like I've been focused on growth content, right? Like content to actually try to get people into my ecosystem. And what I need to start transitioning to is like, yes, still need to put 3, let's call it 3 of those out there every single week, but I need to start adding more vlogs. I need to start adding more like behind the scenes of us building Marketing Exam and what we're doing with clients. And more of like my actual, like what we tell people to do, like the founding story, right? Like I'm so in on just putting out like that educational content because anytime we do it, we get leads.
Yeah, well, and the hard part is those don't do super well either. So I've been in the same scenario where like I talked about value for so long without talking about my story or providing like personality, because it's hard too. Like also our lives aren't like you can see it on LinkedIn, or it doesn't, like, everything's kind of inherently more complicated than most people's, but like it doesn't matter. Those 1,000 people that see it, or those 5,000 people that see it, now have such a bigger like recipe of that, and something like worth getting through your heads. But something I respect a lot about you that I think is worth like having some context on is like, so you blew up, and Marketing Examine blew up in the Twitter era. You were like a master of, I post Twitter content, and I get email subscribers from Twitter content. Like, you had that locked in. But then, like, you can't do that on Twitter anymore, right? No one gets it off Twitter. And you, like, breath being the birds here. You know, you methodically were like, okay, I'm going to use this next social media to like engineer the same thing and like find the same way out, like in a different way. And I feel like you get these people that get content doing it on one thing and then just can't change to the new wave. And so I think that it's worth like thinking through. If you ever in those scenarios you feel behind that, like, I don't know, you did that in like the last like 6 months. Like, you did some content before, but you really like went after it. Like, you can still do that now, and it's worth like really taking seriously. Like, you can get leads from anywhere if you are dedicated enough and you provide enough value.
100%. So what I'll say is our company went from roughly close to $1 million to $3 million run rate in the last 6 months from short form. You know what I'm saying? Like, completely changed the company, and it even helped us launch a new product that we've been toying with the idea of, and it naturally happened. And I had one of the biggest individuals in the fitness world hit me up, and without even having to launch the product, they were like, "Hey, can you do this for us?" And I was like, that is exactly what we wanted to launch. And it was right out the gate a $12,000 a month bag, right? But the thing was, like, similar to what you said, I didn't really actually go all in on short form until April. April, I was like, okay, I'm gonna post for 30 days straight. And that month I went 10,000 to, I think it was 40 something thousand, right? In a span of a month. And yet before that though, I was still trying to tinker with the idea of, okay, I can make Twitter work. You just have to keep testing things and I can make Twitter work. Until I was like, you can't. And then I was also have conversations with you and Colin, and it's like, you guys would tell me, hey, like, this is happening, and it also all of a sudden made me realize, like, dude, none of these situations happened with Twitter because it's faceless. Unless you're really like that, such a big name, like let's call it, even though I don't really fuck with them, like Levels.io, or like those individuals where they went on places where they did show their faces, and all of a sudden their Twitter content becomes so much more valuable. Like, he goes on My First Million, which has a big fall, and all of a sudden his Twitter.
Look, that's my video has now made my Twitter that much more valuable, and like, people see that, like, it comes back in. But that's what that network's useful for. But that's also why we're on YouTube now, is we realize that that's like another framework for this that provides an even more intimate look. I feel like through sweat equity, people get a much bigger idea of what you're trying to do than they ever could, like in short form. Same thing. What I'm trying to do is communicate that in 60 to 90 seconds. One thing I've been doing is I like to experiment, mainly because I want to be able to be like, hey, we tried this thing we're talking about. You know, and so a lot on TikTok, and that's been really interesting. I've been doing like 6-minute videos.
Have you gotten one a pop?
Yeah, I won a pop this last week. It was like the 5th one.
The last thing I want to touch on before the sun sets is the thing that you haven't talked about enough, I feel like, is you've been cranking on YouTube.
Yeah, and YouTube's been popping. I found my audience on YouTube. I was like, oh, it's not the people I have on Instagram. It is young people that want to learn about creative careers. And so my job is basically to be an educator for them. And if I treat it as I'm telling stories to the 23-year-old me, that's the content that works. And so I've literally been doing that. And I have one content format where it's like school. Learn this thing that they don't teach you in college in 28 minutes. And that format hits. It's hit for you too, right? I will do that a bunch. And then the other format is just like more long form. There are no mentors for creative work. It's just me mentoring for like 25 minutes. And those formats both work. And am I getting, 100,000 views? No. Am I getting 10 to 30 on everything? Yeah. And again, but the follow ratio is crazy versus people that are getting way more, because you're actually providing real value. And I like it. And now I got editor starts this week, and we're gonna take it up a notch. And I'm like, I really feel good about making that work. But it's those formats. You have to find a format that you can repeat, that people want to watch, like a show, and they're not what you'd expect when you're doing like off-ball marketing content,
I think the thing that people don't realize about YouTube as well is when you get somebody into your YouTube ecosystem, they want to follow you everywhere else, right? Like, when I like certain fitness individuals or trainers or whatever that I like to consume, because I'm like, okay, I'm learning something every single time. I feel like, okay, I need to follow them on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, because they're probably putting out good information there that I'm also going to learn. And that happens naturally with YouTube. And I feel like it's happening with you.
Seriously.
Yeah.
People will comment on that and be like, I thought about it a lot and I chose to follow you. Like, fair enough,
I have noticed that we'll have a few people on Sweat Equity. It's like first, and it's like, cool. But shit, wrapping up, that was the first episode of Beach Equity.
Yeah, we're gonna do scenic beaches all over Trinidad and Tobago, the Maldives. You know what I mean? Like, we're ready for it.
Yeah, what's next? We got to go to the hometown Hawaii.
Yeah, I'm on resorts.
Maybe
If you want to do
Capri.
the luxury version of this, we'll break down luxury brands from any of your facilities with the proper budget.
But we need luxury beach chairs. We can't have this janky shit from the
Yeah, I
Airbnb.
mean, this helps keep us grounded. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It can't just be
Keep
G-Wagons.
us humble,
you know?
yeah. I've never seen more G-Wagons in my life than driving in LA.
Yeah, everyone's like, oh, you have a G-Wagon. I'm like, hey, everyone has a
Everyone
G-Wagon.
has a G-Wagon. It's been crazy.
My wife would feel awkward without a G-Wagon. That's how I
Yeah,
feel,
that's fair. That's fair. All right, that's a wrap.